In the village of Zaruna, nestled between rolling hills and a sparkling river, lived Kairo, a man both revered and pitied. He was known for his towering height and powerful frame, which turned any glance his way into a mixture of awe and apprehension. From childhood, his gift had sparked endless rumors. Some whispered he was half-giant, others swore a curse burdened him. Yet behind the muscled exterior was a gentle soul, tormented by isolation. As a boy, Kairo played like any other child, chasing friends across the fields and splashing in the river under the midday sun. But puberty brought shocking changes that set him apart. His size extended beyond mere height. Whispers followed him wherever he went, eventually shaping the man he became, quiet, withdrawn, and resigned to loneliness. Older villagers regarded him with superstition, believing no woman could ever endure his presence, much less share his bed. Children gaped wide-eyed at his broad shoulders and enormous hands. Women, intrigued at first, recoiled when rumors of his enormous gift became too vivid to ignore. Kairo learned to carry himself with caution, lest his every move feed the legend that he was not entirely human. Night after night, he wandered the outskirts of Zaruna, searching for some solace in the moonlit silence. Always alone. Always aching with the question, was he meant to live and die without ever sharing his heart? Little did he suspect, a stranger would soon arrive in Zaruna, offering answers he had given up hoping to find. Morning in Zaruna brought bustling markets and lively chatter. But as Kairo passed through the square, the energy seemed to hush. Women paused with baskets of fruit, their gazes flickering to the ground to avoid his eyes. Men stepped aside, giving him a wide berth. Even the jovial children lost their laughter momentarily, transfixed by the sight of him. His daily tasks felt like a ritual of silent exclusion. He lugged sacks of grain from the mill to the bakery, work that no one else could manage alone. Despite the necessity of his labor, people eyed him with trepidation. Some would nod politely, but it was never accompanied by warmth. Underneath every greeting was the undercurrent of fear. At times, Kairo recalled how, as a teenager, he'd tried to woo a weaver's daughter named Lyra. She was shy, but her smile had dazzled him. Their budding affection collapsed under the weight of rumor. Her parents forbade her from seeing him. When he tried to explain that he wasn't the beast people claimed, she couldn't overcome the terror that gossip had instilled in her. He grew accustomed to loneliness, believing he was doomed to be alone. In his darkest moments, he wondered if he truly was cursed, if the gods themselves had fashioned him as a warning rather than a man. The pain of being feared etched itself into every muscle of his powerful body, reinforcing the tragic notion that no one would ever stand at his side without dread in their eyes. Zaruna's older generation relished tales of old, and Kairo had become a sort of living legend, one cloaked in gossip and half-truths. Farmers passing by would spit on the ground after mentioning his name, as though warding off evil. The village gossip, a woman named Marina, made a spectacle of retelling every story she heard. Kairo's no man at all, she claimed in hushed tones. He's half ogre. I've heard no woman survives a night with him. Younger folk sometimes laughed off the wildest rumors, but even their jokes had a mean edge. They'd nudge each other whenever Kairo passed, whispering about the gift that supposedly made him a danger. Some claimed that a woman's shriek could be heard echoing through the forest the night she tried to be with him. Others insisted he was capable of snapping a grown man in half if provoked. Kairo did his best to ignore the stares, but each rumor felt like a thorn digging under his skin. He helped mend fences, carried heavy loads, and assisted the elderly with chores, only to watch them recoil in uncertainty. Every act of kindness was overshadowed by the spectacle of his physique. At times, he considered leaving Zaruna forever. Perhaps, in some distant land, people would not know his past. But deep down, this was home. He clung to the hope that maybe, just maybe, acceptance could be found among those who already knew of his curse. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, a traveler arrived. Her name was Amaya, a lithe woman with sharp eyes and a confident stride. She rode into the village on a donkey, traveling gear strapped behind her. Heads turned, for strangers were not a common sight in Zaruna. Amaya spoke to the village elder, requesting permission to stay. She offered no grand explanation beyond a desire to learn about Zaruna's weaving arts and pottery traditions. Her manner held a quiet determination that piqued curiosity. Kairo first glimpsed her by the communal well. She was drawing water, her sleeves rolled up as she splashed some onto her face. When their eyes met, he braced for the inevitable flinch. But Amaya didn't look away. In fact, a faint smile touched her lips. "Hello," she called, her voice warm. "It's a lovely evening, isn't it?" Kairo hesitated, nodding. He was used to people averting their gaze. Instead, she walked over, extending her hand. "I'm Amaya. Just arrived today." He managed only a brief greeting in return. "I'm Kairo." She studied him with unapologetic curiosity. There was no scorn in her eyes, no hint of alarm at his towering form. For once, Kairo felt neither pitied nor feared in a stranger's gaze. Little did he know that this moment would be the first step toward unraveling a lifetime of isolation. The following morning, Amaya crossed paths with Kairo again near the blacksmith's forge. She greeted him cheerily, unfazed by the hushed whispers of the villagers who looked on. He noticed how even the blacksmith's apprentice, known for his bold tongue, fell silent when she addressed Kairo so casually. "People say you know these forests better than anyone," she remarked. "I've been hoping to explore. Care to show me around?" Kairo blinked, taken aback. Seldom did anyone voluntarily seek his company. Normally, when a curious traveler passed through, they'd rely on the elder or the local huntsman for guidance. "Are you sure you want me?" he asked, voice tinged with surprise. Amaya tilted her head, her dark hair shifting over one shoulder. "Is there a reason I shouldn't?" A flicker of admiration sparked in him at her calm directness. "People tend to avoid me," he said. She glanced around, noticing the wide berth the villagers gave him. "I've seen. But I don't let rumors decide who I speak to." They set off toward the forest, the path winding through tall pines and twisted oaks. Sunbeams filtered through the leaves, creating shifting patterns on the ground. Amaya peppered him with questions about the types of trees, the best spots to gather kindling, the local animals. Kairo answered in a soft-spoken tone, occasionally allowing himself to meet her curious eyes. By the time they emerged, Kairo felt an unfamiliar sense of gratitude. Amaya had treated him as a guide, not a danger. As they parted, she gave a small wave. "Thank you for today. I hope we can do it again." Kairo's heart thudded in his chest, the echo of her smile lingering long after she disappeared from view. Word traveled fast in Zaruna, especially when it involved Kairo. By evening, talk of the newcomer who had accompanied him to the forest spread like wildfire. At the local inn where travelers sometimes gathered, groups of villagers exchanged hushed speculation. "I heard she walked with him into the forest, alone," someone whispered. Meanwhile, Amaya found lodging in a small spare room at the local potter's house. The potter's wife gently tried to warn her, "Kairo is known to be dangerous. You might want to keep your distance, dear." Amaya only smiled politely, neither confirming nor denying her concern. Her mind lingered on Kairo's guarded expression, the way he hesitated when she asked direct questions. Something in his eyes told her there was more to his story than the fearful rumors. Kairo, for his part, felt the weight of the village's watchful gaze everywhere he went. Yet for all the gossip and side-eyes, Amaya did not shy away. The next morning, she greeted him with a nod by the bakery, asking if he had plans to gather herbs in the forest. He worried for her safety, but her confidence reassured him. With each shared walk, they defied the village's expectations, forging a connection that neither fully understood. A flicker of hope stirred in Kairo, though he hardly dared to trust it. That afternoon, Amaya took Kairo by surprise. She found him by the river, where he was gathering flat stones for the village mason. The sun shone overhead, making the water shimmer like liquid glass. Amaya approached, crossing her arms. Kairo, she said, her voice clear, I want to understand you. But I also want you to understand yourself. He paused, brow furrowed. What do you mean? She surveyed him, noting his powerful build. You walk through the village with your head bowed, apologizing for your own existence. But strength isn't something to fear if you learn to control it. His breath caught in his throat. No one had ever framed it that way. I wouldn't know where to start, he admitted, placing a stone in his basket. Amaya's eyes gleamed with resolve. We start by teaching you how to harness your power instead of shrinking from it. She handed him a small leather pouch filled with water, challenging him to carry it without letting a single drop spill. At first, he scoffed at the triviality, but he soon realized that the slightest misstep could squeeze the pouch too tightly. Amaya walked beside him, instructing him to adjust his stance, to focus on each movement. A few villagers watched from afar, whispering among themselves. Kairo, determined, managed to reach the well without losing a drop. For the first time, he felt a glimmer of pride in controlling his might rather than fearing it. Over the next weeks, Amaya and Kairo developed a steady routine of training. Each dawn, they met on a secluded patch of grass behind the potter's house. There, she guided him through breathing exercises and controlled movements she'd learned from ascetics in distant lands. Kairo discovered how tension in one muscle could cascade into a harsh grip or sudden lurch. Intrigued and anxious, he practiced with unwavering commitment. Amaya's patient teachings extended beyond the physical. She spoke of mental discipline, urging him to banish the voices of rumor from his head. We can't erase what people say, she told him one morning, but we can decide how much power it holds over us. Their bond deepened as they shared more of their histories, Amaya revealing her travels, her thirst for knowledge, her brushes with danger. Kairo, in turn, unveiled the lonely nights spent questioning his worth. A warmth grew between them, an empathy that transcended rumor. Still, Kairo wrestled with doubts. Even if he learned control, would any woman truly accept him? Each time he voiced such worries, Amaya responded with calm faith. You're kinder than you know, Kairo, she'd say. That's more important than any rumor. A pivotal moment came under a moonlit sky beside a still lake. The air was cool, the water reflecting a halo of starlight. Amaya led Kairo through a final series of slow stretches, then gestured for him to sit. Kairo, she said softly, I won't pretend the rumors mean nothing. But I want you to tell me about your burden from your own lips. He swallowed, nerves fraying. Usually, this was the point where women fled. But Amaya's steady gaze anchored him. Slowly, he explained how his size had always overshadowed any chance at closeness. They say I'd break a woman, he confessed, voice trembling. And I've believed them. Amaya listened, her expression tinged with empathy. Have you ever been allowed to explore intimacy safely? To learn what your body is capable of when guided by trust, not fear. He shook his head, tears burning behind his eyes. Every attempt ended in panic or rejection. I stopped trying. She reached out, placing her hand on his. I don't see a monster, she murmured. I see a man who's never had the chance to understand his own power. In a moment that felt both surreal and inevitable, she leaned in, letting him hold her carefully. Heart pounding, he remembered her lessons. Measure each movement. Breathe slowly. Pay attention to her body's cues. Far from recoiling, she relaxed into his arms. That night, Kairo realized that, with trust and discipline, closeness might be possible after all. At dawn, word of their late-night meeting circulated. Gossip flared anew, with some claiming witchcraft allowed Amaya to survive. Others warned that her demise was imminent. Marina fanned the flames, declaring it an affront to the gods. Kairo felt torn between elation at Amaya's acceptance and guilt for the scrutiny she endured. He offered to step back, to spare her the village's wrath. But she refused. I'm not running, she insisted. Let them talk. We know the truth. As they continued their training and nightly walks, hostility simmered. A few villagers spat curses when they passed. Yet a small number watched curiously, wondering if their union might be more than a tragic rumor in the making. Kairo fortified himself with each shared moment. While he still wrestled with doubts, Amaya's unwavering support reminded him that not everyone believed he was a monster. Together, they braced for the next test fate would surely bring. Driven by the growing tension, they pushed their regimen further. Before sunrise, Amaya led Kairo into deeper woods, teaching advanced techniques of breath control and mental centering. She spoke of teachings gleaned from monks who could slow their heartbeats at will, warriors who practiced restraint as an art. Kairo was accustomed to harnessing brute strength, not delicate precision. Yet each day, he felt his body responding, forging a new relationship with power. Amaya also challenged him emotionally. She encouraged him to unearth the shame and anger buried by years of ridicule. "It's not enough to be physically controlled," she told him. "You must accept who you are, wholly, or the old fears will always creep back." In time, he began to see glimpses of a version of himself that wasn't defined by rumor, a man who might stand tall without apology. Though the path remained uncertain, Kairo found solace in these rigorous lessons. He was no longer enduring life, he was shaping it, guided by someone who believed in his capacity for change. One day, Amaya showed Kairo an aged scroll detailing an ancient discipline rumored to unite body and spirit. The text described meditations aimed at mastering primal impulses. Together, they spent hours deciphering symbols by the glow of candlelight, adopting the chants and poses described. Though skeptical at first, Kairo marveled at how certain phrases calmed his mind. As he breathed in sync with Amaya, he sensed a powerful inner current. Instead of dreading his body's might, he began feeling at one with it. Their bond deepened further. They shared laughter over failed attempts at complex poses, confided dreams of a future freed from scorn, and occasionally glimpsed the spark of mutual longing in each other's eyes. Far from diminishing his masculinity, the training awakened a gentler, more confident side of Kairo. In discovering these ancient secrets, he rediscovered hope. No longer did he see his size as a guaranteed curse. Instead, it was a source of potential he had only begun to understand. Encouraged by the progress, they dared to test the waters of physical closeness. Late one evening, they settled by a secluded fire pit where sparks danced under the open sky. Amaya guided Kairo to focus on each breath, each sensation. Slowly, they explored gentle contact, her hands tracing the corded muscles of his arms. He trembled, memories of past failures stirring panic. But she reassured him at every step. "If it hurts, I'll tell you," she promised. "If I'm scared, you'll see it in my face. Trust me to speak." For the first time, Kairo felt a partner's comfort rather than dread. They did not rush or push boundaries recklessly. Instead, each movement was a lesson in trust and self-control. Their closeness ended with both of them breathing steadily, hearts pounding with a blend of relief and wonder. In the silent aftermath, he realized the magnitude of what had just happened. He had not caused harm. Though there were still untraveled depths between them, this was a beginning unlike any Kairo had ever known. Morning arrived with another wave of chatter. A few villagers who glimpsed them returning to the potter's home at dawn predicted that tragedy was inevitable. Some demanded the elder intervene, claiming Kairo's power, if unchecked, could bring ruin. But the elder responded carefully, "If there is harm, let it be proven, not assumed." Amaya continued her routines, collecting herbs, studying local crafts, and greeting people with unruffled composure. Kairo, inspired by her steadfastness, tried to repay the kindness of those who had always been civil. He fixed a broken gate for an elderly couple, helped a frail man gather crops. Despite the persistent rumors, a subtle shift began. Some villagers found their fear tempered by the growing evidence that Kairo was more gentle giant than monster. In private, Kairo confessed to Amaya his gnawing fear that one mistake could undo all their progress. She placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We won't be perfect," she said. "But we won't give up, either." A test of his control arrived unexpectedly. A merchant's horse bolted in the market square, dragging a cart loaded with pottery. Screams filled the air as people scattered. In a heartbeat, Kairo darted forward, grabbing the cart's edge and whispering calming words to the panicked animal. Remembering all he'd learned, he steadied his grip, careful not to jerk too hard. Gradually, the horse calmed, stamping the ground in agitation before finally standing still. Onlookers exhaled in disbelief. The very force they once feared had just saved their stalls from ruin. A middle-aged man approached, breath hitching. "Thank you," he managed, voice shaky. That single phrase echoed a shift in sentiment. For the first time, Kairo tasted public gratitude rather than suspicion. Later that day, as he relayed the event to Amaya, she smiled widely. "See? Your strength protected rather than harmed." He nodded, still rattled by the rush of adrenaline. But beneath the nerves lay a profound sense of victory. Perhaps, in moments of crisis, the village would realize he was not the beast they imagined. Bit by bit, he was unearthing a new identity, a protector, not a pariah. Buoyed by the incident, Amaya made a bold decision. One evening, while villagers gathered in the square, she raised her voice. "Hear me, people of Zaruna. I wish to stand by Kairo, not as a passing traveler, but as his partner." A stunned hush fell. Even Kairo froze, heart thudding. "I ask the blessing of Zaruna," she continued, "though we'll stand together regardless." Shock rippled through the crowd. Some stared in mute astonishment, while others murmured disapproval. The elder stepped forward, face somber. "Our traditions demand proof of unity. Are you willing to undergo the forest trial? 3 nights in the old shrine?" Amaya's gaze never wavered. "Yes," she said firmly. Kairo, pulse pounding, stepped beside her. Though fear flickered in his mind, of failing her, of not measuring up, he found the strength to nod. He wanted to protect her from scorn, but she had chosen him, defying every dire warning. The elder, subdued yet respectful, announced they would depart at dawn. The square buzzed with alarmed whispers, but the decision was made. Their fate hung on a centuries-old test of endurance that even seasoned couples approached with caution. At daybreak, they left for the forest shrine, a secluded clearing guarded by ancient pines. Legend said couples who braved 3 nights there, away from all aid, would prove unbreakable bonds. Armed with minimal supplies, they set up a makeshift shelter under the towering trees. Each day tested their resourcefulness, finding fresh water, foraging edible roots, weathering the chill of evening winds. But each night tested their emotional core. Crouched by a small fire, they bared their greatest fears. Kairo confessed nightmares of hurting Amaya inadvertently, or of her waking one day to regret choosing him. Amaya admitted worries that the village's scorn might eventually wear her down. They leaned on the teachings, breath work, open communication, unwavering trust. By the 3rd dawn, they emerged from the woods not just unscathed, but closer than ever. Their mutual reliance had only solidified their devotion. Villagers waiting at the forest's edge gawked to see Amaya unbroken and Kairo unburdened. The elders solemnly declared their union approved by Zaruna's oldest custom. They returned to a mixture of hushed awe and lingering prejudice. Some villagers muttered that the gods might still punish them. Others, particularly the young, began celebrating their triumph as a sign that old fears could be challenged. Kairo and Amaya stood before the elder, who formally recognized their marriage in front of the gathered crowd. A ripple of applause mixed with uncertain silence. But in that moment, Kairo realized he no longer needed universal acceptance. He had found love and respect within himself, bolstered by Amaya's faith. Days became a blur of cautious congratulations. A few villagers who once avoided him now approached shyly, grateful for how he'd handled the runaway cart or curious about his training. While Marina still cast suspicious glares, her influence waned. The man once labeled a monster was building a life in full view of everyone. In spite of remaining skeptics, the village arranged a modest wedding festival at sunset. Lanterns glowed in the square, where tables were laden with food. Musicians struck up a lively tune, and even those uncertain about the marriage joined the festivities out of curiosity or tradition. Amaya wore a simple, elegant dress, her hair braided with ribbons. Kairo donned a fresh tunic, nerves prickling at the attention. When the music swelled, he offered her his hand. They danced slowly, at first awkward, then relaxed as the crowd looked on. While some onlookers gawked, others applauded the couple's bravery. Children pointed excitedly, whispering that maybe the rumors were wrong all along. The night air filled with a cautious joy, punctuated by an undercurrent of disbelief. For Kairo, it felt like a dream realized. He held Amaya, mindful of each careful step. Each swirl on the makeshift dance floor reminded him how far he'd come, from an outcast dreaded by all to a groom receiving well wishes. Whatever trials lay ahead, this moment of acceptance was a victory he would cherish forever. Time flowed on in Zaruna. While some villagers never fully abandoned their superstitions, many softened in the face of Kairo's proven kindness. He and Amaya opened informal lessons, teaching breathing techniques and control strategies to anyone curious, young men wanting to handle their budding strength responsibly, women intrigued by Amaya's role in guiding him. Though the older generation was slow to adapt, a new narrative emerged, the so-called giant, who found balance through discipline and love. Word reached neighboring villages, drawing the curious to witness the man who defied a curse. In quiet evenings, Kairo and Amaya strolled the riverbank, reflecting on the improbable path that led them to marriage. No longer was he the man who wandered in moonlit solitude, haunted by rumor. He had learned to wield his strength and share it with a partner who saw beyond the legend. Their story endured as a beacon of hope. For if a man labeled monstrous and a woman unafraid of stigmas could forge a life together, then perhaps everyone who felt too different, too feared, or too alone could also find acceptance. And so, in the heart of Zaruna, the legend of Kairo and Amaya lived on, reminding all that even the heaviest burdens could be lifted by the right embrace. The end.